So it's the first week in office for the new mayor of Johannesburg. The ANC's Dada Morero sworn in over the weekend after a successful vote of no confidence against DA Mayor Mpho Phalatse. Now, the DA has gone to court to challenge the way Friday's vote of no confidence went ahead in the Joburg Council. There are many fingers of blame being pointed after the collapse of the DA-led voting bloc. I'm joined now by the host of Power to Truth here on eNCA, Professor JJ Tabane. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. You know, Action SA and the PA are blaming the DA's so-called intransigence and arrogance. The DA is hotly denying that. I'm sure you've been looking into the situation, speaking to your contacts. Have you got a view of actually what went wrong? And is there any one party to blame?
No, it takes two to tango. It's like when there's a divorce, there'll always be somebody who believes they were the better one. But it takes two to tango. In this case, it takes more than two to tango. I mean, if you look at the number of parties, there's always been a doubt of saying, how do you pull a coalition of so many parties? So it was... in a sense, a high standard to reach in our immature political landscape, I must say. Right? So coalitions require a heightened level of political maturity. What am I talking about? Let's start with the DA. There's an issue about power play within the DA itself between local leaders and national leaders. So you've got if you like, an overbearing a federal chair like Zille. I mean, I like Zille a lot, but I can't imagine working with her every day. I mean, she must be, a lot to handle. So that cannot be ruled out because there's been a lot of mutterings about how Zille communicated with other parties. Even Colin Makubele was saying that Zille rang her up to say, "You're not the acting speaker." And all of that. So there's that power play between national and local leaders. I don't think Mpho Phalatse was given the carte blanche that an executive mayor of a big city like that would be given. For example, when they had to finalize the negotiations, they kept her out of those. Maybe they would say she's conflicted. She had to consult on appointing her own executive, right? But generally, she has a good relationship with Zille, which also was a mitigating fact. So that's the first part on the DA. The second part on the DA is the provincial leadership who feel sort of left out of that tussle between national and local. So Solim Simanga, out of all the things that he could have done, a day before there was a do or die vote, writes an opinion piece in the newspapers, lambasting the coalition partners and calling them names. And that infuriated somebody like PA who were already jumping the gun. I'm told that they did some background, dealings with the ANC. That will come to light eventually. That's everything that happens in the dark always does. But they used that kind of, if you like, arrogance of the provincial leadership of the DA to justify why they had to walk away. Action SA has said as much, right? That the arrogance of the DA leadership. So there is that part of the DA. Action SA, on the other hand, similarly, throwing their toys out. They're already saying, Gurulani may also collapse and so on.
Do you think it will? I mean, is it really at risk?
Because remember, the three metros were part of an agreement, a central agreement, largely between the DA, Action SA, and one or two other smaller parties. So it was not individually negotiated as those three. So they were collectively negotiated. So I wouldn't be surprised if the other two, even Tshwane, I talked to the Tshwane mayor and the ANC secretary last week on the show, and they hinted as much that the motion of confidence there is also coming. So you are looking at the collapse of all the metros eventually, right, being handed back to the ANC, which all the parties, ironically, have always said, we must keep the ANC out, we know they want to steal, etc., etc. But when it comes to the crunch, the ANC clearly has outmaneuvered them.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Someone made such a good point on social media, saying that many of the smaller parties won votes last November because they took such a strong anti-ANC stance. Yeah. And some of those parties are now getting into bed with the ANC. So my question to you is, how are these smaller so-called anti-ANC parties actually fulfilling the wishes of their supporters? Are they betraying them?
Well, it depends how you look at it, because when people vote for a smaller party, they're not necessarily voting against the ANC. They may just be looking for an alternative. In any event, when it comes to local government, people vote different. Sometimes people may say, we want the ANC to remain at national, but at local would like to vote the DA or would like to vote COPE or the smaller party and so on. So it's not, I don't think we should necessarily say they're betraying their voters by voting with the ANC.
Yeah.
It's if they have expressly, and not all of them have done so, expressly said, we want you to vote us so that we can kick the ANC out. Those ones must have a lot of explaining to do if they then go and throw their lot with the ANC.
And the Action SA, of course, is one of those parties. And it's interesting, they haven't divorced the DA. They've basically said, I need a bit of space and we'll talk on Wednesday. It's like a bad breakup, isn't it? But Action SA seems to be open, perhaps, to, and it's so interesting because there are many former DA leaders within Action SA. So they've done the rounds. They know what this political round is like, and they're probably thinking these are possibly better partners. But you know, you mentioned where the DA has gone wrong, and you said all the parties have played a bit of a role.
Yes.
Because I was going to ask you, you know, you can't lay it all at the DA's door, because if you look at what happened in Nelson Mandela Bay, the ANC's just lost out because the mayor has been ousted by a DA coalition. So would you say that come 2024, if we are heading for more coalition politics, there's lots of learning to be had? And if so, what are the big lessons?
The big lesson, frankly, is political maturity. Right? For the fact that the Action SA and DA could sit in a room, one thought it's a step in the right direction for political maturity, because people are sworn enemies. I mean, you only have to listen to Mashaba why he left the DA to think they'll never sit in the same place. However, interestingly, Action SA have said, and I have this on good authority, that, well, it looks like we'll talk to you once you have a new leadership in the DA. So they're not opposed to the DA as a party in totality, but they are fed up with the current leadership, who they believe is too arrogant, sees themselves as a big brother, big sister, etc., instead of seeing themselves as equals. And I think, for me, that's what I'm saying, it comes from both sides, because Action SA also, in order for them to feel better about themselves and so on, they say, oh, no, then we just throw the baby with the bathwater. And in the meantime, the citizens are going to suffer. And they're going to blame them later when things really go wrong. So I don't think they should have simply said, oh, because we don't like Zille, we're going to throw the DA thing out. And in fact, we're threatening that the good lane is next. What's going to happen to the citizens of these metros?
Well, exactly. I mean, you know, we want to see good services. We want to see the people we elect doing the right thing, being ethical, not stealing money. You know, Solly Mzimanga's made some quite startling allegations against the ANC, suggesting that they're there just to loot the coffers of Johannesburg for 2024. From what you know of Dada Morero, do you think that that's his agenda?
It would be unfair to say so. I think we'll have to watch him and see what he does. Remember that now that you've got multiple parties, and it's always my view about coalitions, that we are likely to see less stealing going on, because these guys are watching each other. And they are actually waiting to out each other if they were to steal. So if Dada Morero had the agenda, and I want to believe that he doesn't, right, to just steal ahead of 2024, which we have seen happen, right? It's not just a theoretical pie in the sky. What happens quickly, the anatomy of corruption is that a party gives a business, inflates the price of a tender, with understanding that the portion of that tender is going to go by a back door to the party. We have seen that, for example, in the housing project. There's a big housing project called Montrose, somewhere in West Rand, where prices were inflated, you know, so suppliers were not paid.
There's more eyes. I mean, that's an excellent point that you make, and also the point that political maturity is absolutely critical as we go towards 2024. Talk to me about your show coming up at 8 o'clock tonight.
Senzo Mqunu, who's the Water Affairs Minister, is coming to answer about water problems everywhere in Gqeberha, the dam, all that. But also, remember, he lost to Ace Magashule in 2017, and I'll be asking him whether or not he still has a political agenda, will, and determination to go again for the top 6 position in the ANC. So it's going to be an interesting political discussion there with him.
He's a big ally of Cyril Ramaphosa, isn't he?
Absolutely. But the question is he not tired? You know, why are they recycling the same people? I'll be asking him, you know, shouldn't he be trying to do something else?
Yeah, I look forward to that one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
That is host of Power to Truth here on eNCA, Professor JJ Tabane. Now,